Hi everyone, my name is Phyllis Atieno. Welcome to today's talk. Um, I'm happy to be giving this talk, even if it's virtual. I'm hoping that it will be as impactful as I intended it to be if I would have given it physically. Um, Once again, my name is Phyllis Atieno. I'm a community and DevRel intern at Chimani. So let's dive straight into the talk. My talk today is about the impact that is created when two great things come together, that is open source and community. Obviously, when two things come together, there must be the good and the bad. So I'm going to take you through the whole process, both the good and the bad. This session is going to take you through what open source is. So if you're wondering what open source is, don't worry, I'm going to take you through that. I'm also going to explain what the benefits of open source are. And there's also the importance of community in open source. That's another area I'm going to touch on. I'm going to give you examples of open source projects I've contributed to or I've been part of or maintained um, that has benefited from the power of community. And also, like I said, there must be the bad side. I'm going to take you through the challenges involved and how to get involved in open source. If you're looking to get started, this session is for you. And we're going to wrap up with those outlines. So let's start our session today. If somebody asks me what open source is, the picture that comes into mind is a playground. Children are playing together, and um, as I as someone who was young once, everyone has been young once. Um, we tended to share our toys, whatever we had, with our friends and the kids we played around. And that's the kind of environment that open source creates. So open source is an environment where people come together to collaborate, share ideas, contribute to code. So most of the people know open source as mostly contributing to code, but I think the other side of reviewing code, sharing ideas, planning the project is not majorly talked about, and that is something that is also included. So when someone asks me what open source is, I always say it's a collaborative environment. Whatever you think of when the word collaborative comes to mind, that is what open source is. And as you've seen in my slides, it's a software that the source code is made available to anyone. So they can share it, they can edit it, and they can also contribute to it. Okay, let's go to the next part. There are benefits of open source, and these are just the few that I felt were important, but there are very many benefits of open source. The first one is transparency. Um, Open source creates transparency in such a way that projects that are being contributed to, everyone can know what is happening at what time. Um, the the perfect example I can think of is when you first, for me, when I first choose a project to contribute to, I usually look at the README file, and there you find everything. And if a project is an open source project is good enough, they'll include everything that you need to get started with. So if you're a beginner, it's really rare to get stuck. And if you get stuck, there are mentors to help you. Such kind of a project is an epitome of transparency. So open source creates transparency around the creation of software, and that is something that I thought should be at the top, because transparency is important when creating such kind of impactful things that people are going to use. Open source is also cost saving. So I know I shouldn't be using this example, but in the company I work with, that is Chimani, we came up with an idea. Actually, the community members came up with an idea of creating an open source community member site. So that is they're the ones collaborating on that. They're working on creating a website. And if we had sought other alternatives, we would have maybe, let's say, because it's a company, we would not have looked outside, but because we have software engineers, they would have worked on it. But then, since they are the ones working on it, we don't need to seek other engineers to come in and create the website. They're having fun while at it, and they're also saving on costs because they're gaining skills, even though they're not getting paid, but it saves on costs for the company or for the project that is being worked on. And we also have continuous improvement. Most open source projects are usually being improved each time. It won't be the same as you found it years ago. So I remember the first project I contributed to, um, it was Public Lab, and I remember it was they were seeking new contributors, first time contributors, to help guide through the whole open source project, and I really loved it. But now when I look at the kind of issues they have, the kind of things they've done around their software, they've really improved. They've greatly improved because they're new contributors, their community has grown, and the software is being improved for the better. So there's usually continuous improvement when it comes to open source because there are people who are always willing to better your code, share their ideas on what you can do better, and that is another benefit of open source. And yes, so the best for the last, community and collaboration. Open source gives you the benefit of creating a community. So it might be reverse, it might be direct. By reverse, I mean you might first create a community and then work on an open source project together. Or you might first work on an open source project together and then you realize, we actually click, we could benefit from creating a community of the contributors working on this software. So both ways work. And by creating a community, it increases collaboration. When someone has a problem, there's always chances of someone being always ready to help because there's not only one person, and it makes communication easier. Yeah. And yeah, that's another benefit of open source. Uh, Now to the most important part, the importance of community in open source. Community plays major roles in open source, and one of them is collaboration and contribution. Community members work on collaborating together to form new ideas, um, work on something new, implement something new, and contribute it to the code. And um, also, I'll use the same example. In Chimani, the community members really they strive to create new ideas every day and implement them on the project. So if someone has an idea, they reach out to the next person, see if it's viable or not. If it's viable, they add it to the project, and the contribution goes on, uh, reaching to continuous improvement, like I said. We also have user support and feedback. If you have an open source software that community members are working on, or you have a community that's working on your open source or software project, most likely you will receive suggestions on what you could change, or someone experienced a problem and they think that this is the best way to help solve that problem so that any other person encountering it won't experience the same. So it's really crucial in the community essence. They usually provide user support and feedback, which is very important in your development process. We also have sustainability. So community members or the community greatly contributes to the sustainability of your project. That is, we have people who are going to ensure that the project is working and meets future needs, so that there are always people who are ready to help contribute to your software, so that in the future it might work as well as you intended it to right now. So right now you're working on code, but then I'm sure some open source projects don't think of what about the future. Will this software still be as viable as it is right now? Community helps you manage that. There are usually people who are ready to think about that. Is this software really sustainable for the future? And Yeah, that's another reason why you should have a community or you should join one in case you're contributing to open source. We also have code review. Um, in most open source projects, I've seen that when contributors first come in, let's say you're a new contributor, you come in, you start contributing to the code, and you're really active. You know, um, in some few months, you know the nitty gritties of the software. You're able to navigate very well through it. Such kind of contributors are usually selected to maintain code, and in turn they usually help to review code. So it's not always the administration of the open source projects that usually review the code, but also the community members who are who know the nitty-gritties of the software and are able to help also do the code review. And if, let's say, you have maintainers who are committed, or like they sometimes they're held up somewhere and maybe there's a peer to be reviewed, an issue to be created, these community members come to help in reviewing the code. And yes, learning and sharing. What is a community without learning and sharing? Every day I learn as part of the communities that I am in, and every day I share what I know and they share what they know. And this contributes to the growth of everyone in the community. Yes, and we have examples. Um, the examples I have here are of open source projects or open source software I've worked with or I've maintained. I wanted to list the most impactful ones to me. I know I mentioned Public Lab; it was really impactful. But then I mentioned Chimani, the company I intern with, because it was an idea that was amazing, and we've seen it grow from an idea to something that is now able to be seen. Uh, and it was an idea by the community members to create a site for themselves, and it's something that grew from the design. So the designers in the community created the design, the the developers in the community created the development, and the content team created the videos and the tutorials, blogs and everything, and added them there. And I think this is the perfect example of community coming together to uplift open source. It's something that I love talking about because it's an awesome thing that the community members did, and it shows the power of community in software. And the other example is Bioconductor. So the Bioconductor project is a project I contributed to. Um, it's a software for analysis and comprehension of high throughput genomic data. So the specific issue I worked on was converting their Swift files to Markdown, and I I became part of that community as a newbie. I didn't know anything about Swift files or converting them to Markdown, but I they took me through the whole process of understanding what they're doing, how the conversion is done, and in the end, I managed to create so many PRs. It's a community that helps one grow as an open source contributor, and it's also a perfect example of what happens when community comes together with open source. It's a really amazing project, and I was happy to be part of it because it showed me the benefit of community and what I can do when I'm part of it. And there's no good thing without the bad side. And so here are the challenges. In open source, and when you're managing a community, I'm talking as someone who manages a community, there's usually a problem with communication and coordination. So someone has created a PR, you're the maintainer, maybe you've not seen it, and they're trying to reach out so that you can merge their PR so that they can work on the next issue. Sometimes communication is really trickling. There's less communication. Maybe you've reached out to a channel where the maintainer is not active in, and it maybe takes days for them to read it. So communication and coordination is sometimes so hard. Um, and once many PRs are being created, you have to review all of them. Or you're in a community, you have issues, someone wants to work on this issue, you have to see if it's okay or not, or if the issue was taken up and you didn't know. There is usually the problem of communication and coordination. It sometimes gets jumbled up and it becomes a problem. We also have the issue of governance. Governing the people who are actually contributing to your open source project is not as easy as one might think, because um, there's some projects that have hundreds of contributors per month, and you have to manage all of them. Um, it's not easy. It's not an easy job, and that is a challenge in the open source community. Sorry. Also have quality control. People may be submitting PRs, submitting codes, but then is the code valuable enough to be added to your repo or to your software? Is it in the standard that you want it to be for your software? That is another challenge. So you might merge a peer that maybe is not qualified, and then someone else might review it and think, ah, no, I don't think this piece of code qualifies to be merged. So quality control might also be an issue, and we have contribution diversity. Sometimes your open source project might only be contributed to by people who maybe are in the same country as you, um, and because open source aims to promote diversity and inclusion, it might be something hard to manage, because you want more people and diverse people to contribute to your project, but it trickles down to the publicity. If your open source software is only public in the region you're in, or the people you've met, or the people who know you, or the people who are part of your company, then there's no diversity, which becomes a problem. And also maintaining momentum. So there usually, as a maintainer, I know there usually times when PRs are being sent left, right, and center, and then there's a time when there's no PR, no communication, no one asking, can I work on this issue? And the momentum really fluctuates. So it's hard to maintain the momentum. It's not always going to be a busy day or in your open source project or on the project you're going to contribute to. So maintaining momentum is a bit hard. Okay, I wish I could ask questions, because I've touched a lot about so many things, and but this is something that I really want you to get to know of. Many people ask, how do I get involved in open source? They would love to, but how do they get started? The first thing is find a project that interests you. If you're into music, and the good thing about GitHub is it has the labels, so you can search music, and then a project that has a music tag on them appears, and you can go through it and see if it's something you can work on. For me, yeah, I'm using the example of something I love, that's music. If you love the project I contributed to by Conductor, if you love research, there is always a project for anything that you are interested in. So find a project that interests you. Just make sure it's something that is of your interest. Don't just pick a project because you think there are more contributors, or because you know someone contributing to it. Make sure that it interests you, because unless you're interested, it might be really hard to stay committed to the project. And I don't think you want to drop out once you've chosen a project, because the end, when your PR is merged, there's that feeling that it's a certain feeling that you'll enjoy having. Familiarize yourself with the project. After you've chosen the project, go through the README, see who the maintainers are, see what you're supposed to do in order to install the project in your local machine. Do everything, get to know about everything about the project, so that at least you get started on the same foot. Um, And then the next step is to start contributing. So the best thing to do if you're a new contributor, you've never contributed before to the project or to open source, just reach out, say you're a first time contributor, and if there are any issues you can work on. That is, if they don't have the first time contributors tag on their issues. But if they do, choose the first time contributors tag. It's always easier, and uh, it will encourage you to keep on contributing, because you can't start with the hard stuff. You'll always have to start with the easy stuff, so that at least it motivates you that you can do this, you can actually contribute to open source. And then attend community events. These are crucial, very crucial, because during these community events, that's when you'll meet people who share the same views as you, people who maybe contribute to the same projects as you, um, people who are going to encourage you in case maybe you're thinking of, this open source thing is not for me. There are always people who will encourage you. You'll meet like-minded people that will encourage you in your open source journey. Community events are really important, and community events are also where you get opportunities. Don't take them for granted. Uh, these events are curated to help you develop your skills both in your career and also personal skills too. They help you because when you interact, you also grow your personal skills. And that's the end of my talk. I thank you so much for listening. And there is this quote that I'd love to leave you with. Remember to keep your contributions open. It's an ambiguous quote, but I hope it's something that you can remember. Thank you, everyone, and bye. Thank you again for listening to my session.